In this week's Parsha of Toldot, the Parsha starts off with Yitzhak Avinu and Rivka Imenu davening for a child. In the third pasuk it says, Vayatar lo Hashem. Hashem listened to his prayer. Ayah to the tefillah of Yitzchak, giving it priority over the tefillah of Rivka. The reason for this is added by Rashi. Lo velo la. To him and not to her. She'ein domet tfilat tzadik ben tzadik letfilat tzadik ben rasha. The reason Hashem gave priority to the tefillah of Yitzchak over that of Rivka was because Yitzchak was a tzadik ben tzadik. He was righteous, and his parents were righteous. While in contrast, while Rivka herself, a tzidkanit, she was very righteous, she was the offspring of people who were not righteous. This would seem to suggest a general principle that a righteous person, who is the offspring of righteous people, is considered to be on a higher level than a righteous person whose progenitors were not righteous. However, elsewhere in Chazal, we see ideas expressed that seem to be the opposite principle. Rav Dessler, in his work Michtav Mi'ahu, in the third section, discusses this topic on these very psukim in Toldot, and challenges with a Chazal from Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Tet Amud Beit. There we are told that the Navi Ovadia was given the role to prophesy about the end of days of the descendants of Esav, because Ovadia was a tzaddik who, despite the fact that he functioned in the proximity of two great Rishayim, the evil king Achav and the even more evil queen Izebel, but he did not learn evil from their ways. Let him prophesy about the descendants of Esav, where Esav grew up amongst two righteous people, Rivka and Yitzchak, yet was not influenced in a good way by them. This would seem to indicate that one who is able to reach the level of a tzaddik, while amongst negative influences, is on a higher level than he who is a tzaddik in circumstances conducive to being a tzaddik. I wish to add to Rav Dessler's question. Which Baal Tshuva is not familiar with the famous statement by Rabbi Abahu in the Gemara? Makom shebalei tshuva omdim sham, tzaddikim einam omdim sham. The place where Baal Tshuva stands is on such a high level that even tzaddikim can't reach this level. Now, by definition, a Baal Tshuva, while his parents may be the nicest people, if they're not Torah observant, can't be viewed as totally righteous. Yet it seems this saying puts the Baal Tshuva on a higher level than a tzaddik, even the tzaddik who's also the offspring of tzaddikim. Hence the contradiction. To try and answer this, let us analyze each idea. In this section in which Rav Dessler alluded to the above, he explains that the tzaddik ben tzaddik is on a high level based on the Gemara in Yuma Daf Kav Tet Amud Beit, where it says, Kasher atika mechadata. An old approach is more difficult than a new approach. Rav Dessler explains, something new, a new idea, a new approach is very exciting. It's such that one who takes on this approach does so with great enthusiasm and wants to explore all its facets. Hence, when the son or daughter of a non-righteous person decides to go on the path of righteousness, this is a new exciting path, a new thing, and they will put their hearts and soul into every nuance. On the other hand, a tzaddik who's the offspring of a tzaddik, he's seen it all before. He or she grew up in this environment. There's no newness in this approach. This entails a danger that will lead to a religious lifestyle out of habit, with no energy invested into their thoughts and deeds. Chazal described this phenomena based on an expression in Yeshayahu Perek Kaftet as mitzvat anashim milumada, where people go through the motions of religious life. Hence, for tzaddik ben tzaddik, it is a great avoda to overcome this trap. It's a great avoda to treat each mitzvah and every part of one's avodat Hashem with enthusiasm, as one would approach something new. If a tzaddik ben tzaddik can do this, in this respect, his avoda is more difficult, and hence greater than the tzaddik ben rasha. Yet on the other hand, we can understand the greatness attributed to a Baal Tshuva. They had to break new ground. They had to overcome temptations to repeat sins they tasted before they turned themselves around. The tzaddik who was brought up in the right path, who was never fully exposed to such serious sins, therefore he has less of a challenge in this area. The Baal Tshuva needs greater gvura, greater strength in this respect, and hence from this perspective, he is on a higher level than the tzaddik. So how do we solve this paradox? I have an idea I wish to share with you. I suggest it depends. If by tefillah is one of the categories where there is a great danger of falling into this idea of mitzvat anashim milumada, especially for one who grew up in a household where davening started as a young child. Very quickly one can know many parts of the davening off by heart and recite them while on cruise control, while daydreaming. For such a person, there is a real challenge, as the Gemara in Brachot says, to maintain his level of tefillah on a level of tachnunim, sincere supplications. In this category, the challenge of the tzaddik ben tzaddik is greater than the tzaddik ben rasha. For the latter, the tefillah has an exciting newness to it, which is not there for the tzaddik ben tzaddik. One could argue the quality of tefillah of Yitzchak and Rivka were similar, but for Yitzchak to inject into his tefillah this quality of newness, of sincerity, equal to that of Rivka, was a greater avoda, and hence it reached a higher level. However, when it comes to one's makom, to one's four amot of existence, to make that a space of kedusha, of holiness, in that category, the Baal Tshuva, the one who did not grow up in a Torah environment, a Torah atmosphere, he gets more credit. The makom of the tzaddik, the house he grew up in, was already kadosh, already holy, already pure. True, he needs to maintain that purity, that holiness. But the makom of the tzaddik ben rasha was not pure at all. The makom of the Baal Tshuva comes from maybe one of very good, decent people, but is devoid of Torah and mitzvot. By being a tzaddik, the Baal Tshuva, he has turned around his makom in this world by 180 degrees and lifted it up in holiness and purity. In this respect, his avoda is greater than even that of the tzaddik ben tzaddik. Yiratzon, that we may be zochet to meet both these challenges. That is, to maintain a newness and freshness in all aspects of avodat Hashem. Yet at the same time, create and maintain a makom worthy of the dwelling of the Shekhinah. Shabbat Shalom.